I'm Roland Anglin, Dean of the College of Education and Public Affairs here at Cleveland State University. Today's topic is consequential, complex, and huge. The Sustainable Development Goals touch on our continued existence on this planet, and it has changed the way nations, governments, and communities go about their business. Many have embraced SDGs, as they're known in the ergo. Others have not, but it's perhaps the most ambitious collective impact project of our time. I welcome you to this discussion of the SDGs, headlined by Deepa Vidavyas, a program manager at the Cleveland Foundation. You're really going to enjoy this. Deepa is really knowledgeable about the area, and we're lucky to have her this afternoon. So without further delay, I give the gavel over to our Assistant Dean, Kara Keating-Copeland. Kara, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dean Anglin. And thank you, Deepa, for being our expert here today. I'm very honored to introduce Deepa, who served as a program manager for neighborhoods and environment at the Cleveland Foundation since August of 2021. And in this role, Deepa works on an integrated, broad-based approach that knits together the work of built environment, neighborhoods, and housing and community development to build capacity for greater Cleveland's environmental sector and advance equity. Deepa was appointed as a climate champion of Ohio by the American Planning Association's Sustainable Communities Division, and she is co-chair of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network Diversity, Equity, and Justice for Sustainable Development Working Group, and we are very lucky to learn from her today. So Deepa, the floor will be yours. If I could just really quickly give folks a sense of how we will spend our time this afternoon. We've asked Deepa to spend some time to provide an overview of sustainable development and offer some context given her vast experience and knowledge. And then we will go into a few questions that I've prepared and then move into questions from the audience. So as Deepa presents, please put your questions in the chat and we will get to as many as time allows. And now Deepa, thank you.
Thank you so much, Associate Dean Copeland, and thank you, Dean Anglin, and thanks everybody for being here today. To probably get the conversation going, I thought it would probably be best to play a quick, video of the Sustainable Development Goals. And if I may request Bob to please play the video for us, please.
We can be.
We must be the first generation
to end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice
and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done. The global goals.
A 15-year plan
For everyone. Everywhere.
with no one left behind.
We will live in a world
where nobody
anywhere lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry,
Where no one
wakes in the morning
asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world where no child has to die
from diseases we know how to cure.
and where proper health care
is a lifelong right for us all.
we will live in a world
Where everyone
goes to school. And education gives us the knowledge
and skills
For a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive
and be powerful
and safe.
we cannot succeed if half the world is held back.
We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
And proper toilets
At home,
at school
and at work.
We will live in a world where there's sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light,
and power for the whole planet.
Without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper.
and new wealth.
lead to decent jobs
for everyone.
and we will live in a world where our industry
Our infrastructure and our
Best innovations
Are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
we will live in a world
Where prejudices and extremes of inequality
Are defeated
Inside our countries,
and between different countries.
where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
What we consume.
Planet where we put back what we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back the threat of climate
change, where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas. We'll restore and protect
Life on land.
The forests,
Animals.
the earth itself.
with peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
with everyone equal before the law.
where all countries and we their people
Work together.
partnerships of all kinds
To make these goals a reality.
These are the United Nations global goals.
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Once again, good afternoon, everyone. And, it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm going to share my screen and get started with the presentation. So as we saw the 17 goals in a quick synopsis of a video, I just feel extremely grateful to be here with you all today. And the fact that, we are all connected, no matter where we are coming from, which part of the planet we all were raised, and we are here today. Just these looking at these video, even though I've seen this multiple times, just setting a stage through this 17 goals always puts me in perspective that as an individual in Cleveland, I feel so connected to the rest of the world and with every one of you present here today. And once again, thanks to Cleveland State University's Center for Education and Public Affairs. And, thanks to Dean Anglin and Assistant Dean Copeland for the session. I just would like to get started with a quick agenda as an overview of the topic of Sustainable Development Goal is very vast. And for our conversation today, I felt it would be best fit to not only focus on our work at the Cleveland Foundation on aligning our grant making to the goals, but also focus on multiple applications and scales from various examples that has served as a role model to me as I started the work in fall 2021. And many of the examples that I'm going to share today are personally something that I'm aware of by leaders leading these efforts across the country and globe. And some of the applications are going to be at the national level, university level, and the community foundation level that I look forward to sharing with you today. And if I were to summarize the Sustainable Development Goals in one statement, knowing that we have a multitude of experts today here with us, joining from SDSN, professors from Bucknell University and Kent State Universities and other universities who are here, apart from our other partners in Cleveland. I think the best way I could summarize it is SDGs are a universally applied, inclusive, transparent, and a time-bound and a politically agreed upon global framework that was put together by the UN in 2015. And prior to this SDGs, some of us might be familiar with the Millennium Development Goals from 2000, which was focused on reducing extreme poverty. And this particular goal, the SDGs, on the other hand, is focused on including all nations and all people. So this slide that I have put together on nested SDGs, personally, I found this lens very useful as I was trying to understand the goals early on. And there are 17 goals, and sometimes it could be really intimidating as we are seeing as like these are a lot of goals. So for me personally, trying to understand in terms of the 8 goals of the 17, focusing completely on the people and the society, and the 4 goals on the environment and the 4 on the economy, while partnership is the key or the backbone towards accelerating and integrating this work, kind of was a great framework or the thinking that helped me understand these goals better. What excites me the most is the people as being the center of this whole work, and the community and the people being the center of this effort. And the example that I'm going to share today is an SDG alignment effort at the national level that was shared with us at the Cleveland Foundation by Ministry of Ghana. Hildy and Judith, who are also members of UNSDSN, who I got to know during my engagement, since I'm engaged with UNSDSN for over 2 years now. And I'm borrowing their slides for this presentation. This was during the conversation that we had in October of 2021, early on, as I started as a program manager in the first intersectionality position at the Cleveland Foundation across neighborhoods and environment. So during which time I had a chance to speak to the member of the Ministry of Ghana, who shared about her work in aligning the SDGs to their country's budget to mobilize and allocate resources in the country across their work. And this particular image kind of gives how they were able to coordinate the mechanism in Ghana, and how the Ministry of Finance was being the coordinating engine for budgeting and resource allocation across the ministry. As you see, the president, the president of the country being the top, and then after the coordinating role where the National Development Planning Commission comes in, that's where the budgets were aligned to the SDGs, and which was then intentionally partnered with civil societies, private sector, and all the players, other stakeholders of the country to come together to get the impact work implemented. And this slide is a little bit crowded, but kindly stay with me. If I were to take your attention to the Ministry of Energy, as you see in the line item, that it shows that this is one of the ways in which they had focused or streamlined their budgeting efforts in the process, where they had basically looked at the areas in which the SDGs that they were actually going to be allocating their funds at. So SDG 5, which is the gender equality, and then SDG 7, clean energy, SDG 8, which is around decent job growth. So those were the 3 areas in which the Ministry of Energy was allocating their funds. Similarly, when you look at the ministry, sorry, I don't know why this is happening, but okay. So when you look at the Ministry of Education, it was actually allocating their budget in SDG 4, which is education, 5, reducing inequalities, and SDG 11. So again, these are some of the ways in which Ghana was actually trying to allocate their budget at the national level. And again, the special policy and initiatives work that they, the way they looked at the matrices to measure the outcome was also very unique, because what they did was, even though they had focused on SDG 8 as one of their, for example, if they focused on the SDG 8 as one of their area of investment, they had come up with matrices and in the outcome measures which were very contextual. Their goal was to identify some of these areas very specific to their country. And that's what the SDGs are very unique about, because it allows you to come up with your own outcome matrices based on the different contexts, because these are so, that's what makes the SDGs more applicable across different scales, where countries are able to do it and cities are able to do it. The next example that I would like to give is of that of the local government. This is based on from my recent conversation with LA that I had with the International Affairs Department, and they were sharing about their journey. And what fascinated me the most was their dashboard, the most interactive dashboard that they had, recently launched about a year ago, I believe. So the SDGs in Los Angeles City journey was quite impressive. While we have other great examples through New York and other cities, Pittsburgh engaged One Pittsburgh efforts, and San Diego is working on theirs. So there are several other examples, but for today's conversation, I thought LA's would be a good one to talk about. So in 2015, when the goals were released, Mayor Eric Garcetti adopted it, and we decided to create with the city's programs, and he brought in students from across different universities and did the alignment, and also did an updated VLR, which is voluntary local review, that the city kind of engages on in trying to put their work across. And this is the activity index that they had published as an effort, which is very recent, where everyone, maybe it an organization or a person, individual, can report about their organization into this dashboard, where, for example, if you see quality education, which is what I have indicated here, it pulls up almost 40 plus organization that actually works under that type of efforts. So it becomes very easy to connect organizations and people, and the city is leading this type of connectivity and intersectionality work, provides this open platform for people to log in their work and engagement efforts, naturally allows for collaboration. And this is one of the data dashboards, also very interactive, which I thought it was very interesting, because the city reports, we talk about transparency of data and transparency of efforts. The city was able to talk about the different indicators they are using as outcome metrics, measurements. And they also openly report if there's work, they're still exploring the data sources and they're not able to get the data, and they're being more, more aware of the things that they need to work on, and if they are in line to meet the 2030 goal established. And ICLEI has also been doing great work with the SDG Cities Challenge of cohort, that the cities help cities to move towards alignment efforts towards SDGs, which I thought is a big shout out to them, because they have really helped a lot of cities, like even in their cohort last year, they were able to work with City of Atlanta and many other cities. Orlando is a great example as well, which was part of the ICLEI's cohort. At the state level, one thing that kind of I would like to point out is a report. We have Dr. Helen Bond here with us today from UNSDSN, and we also have Dr. Victor Udo from UNSDSN, who are co-chairs. And this particular report, Helen is one of the authors of this report, which is called In the Red, the Failure of the US to Deliver on a Promise of Racial Equity. And this is a very amazing interactive dashboard that actually allows us to look at the various ranking, state level ranking, and where we are in terms of meeting or achieving our goals in the state. And it really allows us to take a closer look at some of the areas that we need to work harder and together on. And as you see, Ohio ranks 46th across 50 states and across all our states. And then we have overall score of 26.6. And all the ones that are noted in red have major challenges in them. So those are the goals that we really absolutely need to focus on, and we are not in line in progress as expected or put forth by the SDGs 2030 agenda. And moving on, I would love to, kind of touch a little bit about and share some of my learnings from being a part of the UN General Assembly UNGA side events, that was held in New York. And this is particularly a learning that came from UN Foundation and Brookings session that was put together on American leadership around advancing SDGs. So corporates like MasterCard and Google are treating these goals as business important, and how they execute, execution of these germane into their business model. Like, MasterCard, for example, pledged $500 million for inclusive economy in 2015, and now $1 billion. And they're also currently working on $250 million towards small businesses and providing, basically support for small businesses. And their recent program that they launched, I believe it's called Strive, which was launched in October to fund the CDFIs for across 5 years, support of small businesses. to help improve the SDG around SDG 8, inclusive economy. And Sustainable Innovation Lab was set up by MasterCard, and they have also again pledged additional $500 million to close the racial equity gap, because without really reducing the racial equity, we cannot talk about inclusive economy. So there are more intentional efforts by corporates that is actually currently happening across the country and across the globe. And that's something that's very important to note, because even organizations like Google and their google.org is taking a different approach to SDGs, where they use what they are good at, right? They are good at technology. So they are basically using advanced technology to reduce cost and impact in the area that they are trying to serve. For example, they're using technology to predict floods and other disasters to save life and save cost. And they work with the local communities through climate science projects and efforts to collect the data, help them analyze, and essentially work with the local government to impact on policy matters. So again, corporates are deeply engaged in the efforts, unlike before. And this is one of the tools that, I'm sure, the experts here who are all attending today, I'm sure, especially Mark Roseland and others who are joining with us, can certainly add to some of these additional data points in here. There is this resource that I particularly found fascinating, World Business Council for Sustainable Development. They have multiple ways you can look through resources like businesses and what their regional focus are, and whether you want to look at webinars or reports across the globe, like what businesses are doing, as a best practice example. And in 2021, Better Business, Better World report also made a compelling case for companies to come together as sectoral level to develop the roadmaps, SDG roadmaps, to guide the industry's shift to sustainable development in line with the SDGs. And these are some, fantastic reports that, I had an opportunity to glance through during my efforts and work as I forwarded at the Cleveland Foundation. And one other, example that I would love to share is the most recent one that was published by Carnegie Mellon University. I'm sure Alex Hineker would join us, who is the brain behind this effort, shortly during the discussion period. And SDG alignment at the university level by Carnegie Mellon University. This is one of the first of a kind. In 2019, Carnegie Mellon University committed to aligning its education, research, operations to the Sustainable Development Goals. And CMU is the first university not only to conduct a voluntary university review, but also to make it open source material so other universities can actually use that. And CMU also opened the Sustainability Studio, a physical space to bring people to connect and collaborate to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And they also have this amazing interactive Tableau dashboard, that allows people to explore how their activities aligns with SDGs. And many of these links and resources I've shared with, with Assistant Dean Copeland. She'll be sharing with everybody later. And this is the dashboard that I was referring to that CMU had created. Sorry, it's not interactive. I tried to create, a screen capture of this. For example, I was curious to see what they were doing around SDG 10. So when you click on that, it kind of pulls up, about 56 different things that they're actually working on to reduce inequalities in terms of education, research, and operations. So that's the type of data. And when you click on them, it takes you to precisely a website and a link that directs you across the universities on what they are working on and how they're moving towards achieving, reduced inequality and so on. So I would like to now share a little bit about some of the work that we are forwarding at the Cleveland Foundation. And again, we are in very early stages as compared to where that had shared about Ghana's example, be it the example of Carnegie Mellon. In the community foundation space, community foundations, again, are at the heart of advancing sustainable development goals across the globe. within their own locale, like, because we are in a very unique position that makes us a convening partner to work strategically on complex social issues. We work very closely with the city, we work with nonprofit partners, we work with intermediaries, we work with corporates. So really, Community Foundation truly is at the heart of working around these complex social issues. And that is one of the reasons we were created to begin with. And Cleveland Foundation being the first community foundation in the world, founded in 1914. I think one of the things that kind of struck me as I started at the foundation, coming in from an absolutely no philanthropic background, was our strategic direction, and how closely it was very much similar to what the SDGs were, talking about fostering inclusive economic prosperity and creating pathways for individual. And the SDGs global vision is to leave no one behind, being the central and transformative promise of the 2030 agenda. So that was kind of the starting point. And always being in the community development space as a community development professional, people has always been the center of my work. And all my work has always been towards the nonprofit work. And, this goals resonated with my values and my beliefs so much that I started looking at our work at the foundation with support of our colleagues at the foundation to use this platform and the framework to brainstorm internally to see how, we can apply this framework without really changing anything in our operations. Again, this slide kind of shows there are 17 goals, but essentially when you go deeper, there are 169 targets and there are over 230 national indicators. Basically, we decided to kind of take it and align it at the target level. While many organizations, community foundations, may have a different approach, we decided to look a little bit closer at the target level, which kind of gives you an insight into specific areas of the work and grant making that we do. So again, this is SDG 4, which is about quality and equitable education for all. This is just a snapshot of the master sheet that I had created using the data from SDSN's web page and for our purpose. And this is just a mock kind of a crosswalk that I created for our work. So basically, what we did was multiple conversations with our program team members, program area, because within the foundation, we have this 9 different program areas that I'll be showing in the next slide. And this is one of the program areas, which is economic workforce development. And again, we have multiple areas within that we provide support. So how do we actually start the alignment? Multiple conversation with the program directors and managers, understanding what has been our support for that year and trying to align into the target level. I don't want to get too much into the technical part of it, but again, that's if SDG 8 is economic and workforce, then what is 8.2? Depending on the grant that we provide, it aligns with 8.2 or 8.4. So that's kind of how the crosswalking or the mapping was done. And this particular slide, I would like to take a little bit more time to explain. What you see on the left side are all our program areas. Education, neighborhoods, and so on. What you see on the right, these are only our standard grants. We have standard donor advice for anybody from the non-community foundation space. Our annual investment in the Cleveland and the 3 county region is about $100 million each year. Is what is invested or what is provided in grants by Cleveland Foundation, and that is provided within these program areas. And we used those grants from January till July to create this mapping and the alignment process. So what we found was just the standard grants, which is part of our grant making. we noticed that these were the 8 SDGs that we were impacting, with partnership for the goals being one of the underlying one across the all the SDGs. So if I take your attention to quality education SDG 4, for example, there are 4 lines that actually comes from SDG 4. What it essentially means is our work in the impacting quality and equitable education not only sits in education as a program area, it also sits in youth, health and human services. Some of arts education we were able to map under SDG 4. And also, we had pre-primary education at the leadership development. So naturally, what it did was it brought the intersectionality of our work to light, through this mapping process or exercise that we embarked on. And sorry about this, just going back. So again, this is like a summarized version, what you see on the right, or like what are the different clusters or areas that are coming together to meet or working towards a specific goal. So when we cluster these goals, these are the 5 areas that the standard grants from Jan of 2022 to July were going towards. So again, that kind of gives a clearer kind of a summarized impact area that we were actually touching upon through our grant making. And when we take a closer look at our education as one of the impact areas with the SDG 4, what we realized is that of the, we had about 145 grants that we had made that was towards a quality education impact area across the 4 program areas: arts education, leadership, education program area, and so on. So within that, what we noticed is almost 1/3 of our grants were going towards youth and adult skill development, towards decent job growth. And almost 40% of our investment through grants were going towards transformative education, which is 4.7. Again, why is this relevant? Globally, there is a huge movement that is happening around Mission 4.7, where leaders from government, academia are brought together to accelerate the implementation of transformative education around the world. So this lens allows us to kind of look at our investment in the SDG 4 differently. Like, what is our impact in the quality education space and in the 3-county region we are supporting? So just in the 6-month time period, what would have otherwise be, looked at just as education as a program area would have reported as 9.3 million. But when you look at an impact area, it is 13.5 million. It kind of brings in those intersectionality of our work around the impact area, not essentially the vocabulary of an organization. This also kind of shows us the unconscious competence of Cleveland Foundation, because this is one of, being one of the oldest community foundation, there is a natural alignment, that unconscious competence, if only we can make it more conscious and be part of the global movement, there is so much more that we could do and accelerate in terms of impact, and we can visibly see progress moving. And this particular slide was actually, I would like to take your attention to the absolute worst performing areas. When I mean, this is not a data that comes directly from anything published by the city. This is coming from SDG Cities ranking report that is published by UN SDSN, where they rank cities based on their performances around all the 15 goals. Actually, in this case, I believe they've gathered data for 15. And in these, if you see, Cleveland is performing really very challenging in SDG 1, 5, 7, and 10. And some of the second worst performing areas are the others noted here. So again, the reason I brought this particular slide up is because the ones highlighted in red are the ones that we have noticed that we have been investing in. So again, that also shows that our investment is going and impacting the community where the need is. So it aligns with where the need is. So that to us almost reinforces and validates our work. But again, the question still remains, how does philanthropy, measure and understand if and how we are moving the needle in the community that we are investing? That is a bigger question, because our work as a foundation, our investment, though it could appear large in the context when we say as $100 million, it is still small compared to the need the community has. So if only enough of us kind of be more aware of where our impact is going towards and collectively work towards, coming together around these impact areas, definitely change or the needle moving can be visible. We can certainly see a visible outcome. And that's how some of the cities that are global cities are kind of doing. And this is, again, the SDGs, the cities ranking report. I have shared a link with the resource list. But again, as you see, we are ranked 73rd. And the ones that I noted as the worst performing areas are the ones that are in red. Again, we currently don't have any green, which means that we are not towards achieving in the right direction towards achieving by 2030. So we are not there yet. So there are still a lot of indicators that we probably have to work more aggressively on, towards achieving. And what is next step for us at the foundation? The Cleveland Foundation is we are continuing to learn, as we are implementing. And again, this is really not going to change anything externally in what we are working with the community. This is basically to help us understand where we are impacting. Internally, the process is still very much internal. So we are trying to look at our grant making, our strategies, evaluating, and coming up with, strategies and measuring outcomes. What is the best way to see how we can, with fewer intervention, how can we make maximum impact in our community? Because our dollars are, still very less compared to the need of the community. So this is our own internal effort to make the best of our work. And what I would like to share here as a next step is we are currently working with Brookings Institution to do a deeper dive of this 17 goals within the Cleveland Foundation team, and hoping to have that a deeper dive exercise with Brookings Knowledge as their knowledge partner, and Mott Foundation, which is a significant supporter of localization of the Sustainable Development Goals, were generous enough to provide us with a grant after looking at our work, $150,000 grant to launch a regional learning cohort for other community foundations. And Philanthropy Ohio has extended their support to offer their platform to convene monthly cohort for other foundations in the region to look at where, to learn more, learn together, and also to look at where our impact is collectively. And Indiana University's philanthropy school has decided to do a teaching case study of our work, because currently there are not that many foundations other than Central Florida Foundation, Collaboratory, and Chicago Community Trust and Flint Foundation. Not many foundations who are actually of our scale implementing, this alignment effort. So they are looking to do a teaching case study of us, which would be published next year. While we took an approach of aligning our work currently to then identify the matrices, I would like to share an example by Central Florida Foundation, which took the opposite kind of an approach for the same, grant making efforts. What they did is to identify the indicators first and then come down towards the impact area. So again, theirs was more of a top-down narrowing of their goals, while we are really looking at what we are currently doing and then going to the indicators of the matrices. So again, that is the beauty of these goals, where it allows us to come up with our own contextual framework and approaches to how we use this framework that is applicable to the cities and contexts that we are in, and how we partner with other organizations. But again, I would like to conclude with some of the benefits of using the SDG framework that meets my, based on my learning, it could be many more that probably I'm missing out, but what makes the SDGs really helpful to us is makes our work as a community foundation more relatable to others. For example, what do I mean by that? When I went to India this summer, what took me almost an hour or 30 minutes to explain what community foundation is and what we are doing could be explained in just 1 minute by saying we are a charitable institution that serves and provides support around these SDGs. And this is what we are doing to create a better outcome. And this is how we are measuring. So that's pretty much, one of the ways that would allow us to communicate through this broader agenda and a common language that is used across the world. And the SDG frameworks, again, can help reveal and make clear the things we are already doing and the priorities that we are already taking on by bringing out how these things are interconnected naturally. More and more our works are all very much interconnected. What used to be just an energy issue is no longer an energy issue. Like if you're working in the space of energy, it touches on job, it touches on health, it touches on poverty alleviation. There are so many intersectionalities, and how do we capture it is what this frameworks allows us to naturally do. And the intention is also to enable us to consider several approaches and address numerous issues with fewer interventions, because you are able to see those intersections. And SDGs simplifies the complex systems and help identify a multitude of non-traditional partners we would not have otherwise partnered with corporate, for example. I'm just giving a random example, but again, now we know what MasterCard is doing, what Google is doing. We see an alignment around SDG 10 to reduce inequality. Maybe that opens up doors that didn't exist before, and increasing transparency and collaboration, breaking both internal and external silos, and unifying us around a shared vision. So ultimately leading towards collective impact. Again, that concludes a really long part of my presentation, but I hope it was beneficial. And back to you, Carol.
Thank you, Deepa. That was absolutely fascinating. I really appreciate your ability to consolidate so much information and really bring it to life, and it makes a lot of sense. I guess my first question to you is, you talk about some of the challenges that our state and our region has faced, and some of the rankings that could be discouraging, but could you talk about a little more about kind of the bright spots, or why you feel like we are ripe for opportunities to grow in this area?
I think everybody starts the journey in different levels, Kara. So again, I think what excites me the most is Cleveland. When I was at the city working as a sustainability manager, doing the Lead for Cities certification process, the citywide process. One of the data that we probably take for granted, that was revealed, is that Cleveland ranks 29th when it comes to volunteer hours and social connectedness in the country. So Cleveland as a city, we are extremely socially well connected. That's such an amazing asset, or I don't know what to call it. It's a blessing, I would say, that the Cleveland has, that not many cities could claim. So that in itself puts us in a greatest position when it comes to partnerships. So I just love the fact that we are in that kind of an environment and an ecosystem. All about this, work is, majority of it comes down to our relationships. How well can we work together and just convene quickly around these initiatives and impacts. So that's what excites me the most. And just imagine, for me being a newcomer and in an oldest foundation, to be so open to welcoming new ideas and immediately come in and support and provide that kind of a support is something that, I could not have imagined had I been in Tampa, Florida, or, some other place. Those are one of the cities I lived. I'm not picking on Tampa, but so just, sharing some of those kind of examples. So that's definitely does excites me. And we are certainly in a great city. I think the environment is perfect for partnering.
Thank you. And you talked about some examples of the work in Ghana and the work in Los Angeles and some other examples that are maybe a little further along than Cleveland. So how can you talk a little bit about kind of best practices and how they broke down those silos? What does that look like?
I think, it was a knowledge that was shared by Hildy and Judith, who were extensively working there. And again, it really always helps when the leadership is on board, rather than being pushed from, bottom up or the middle level. At some time, especially decisions like these, whether we are going to embrace a framework or, is this the framework that we are going to look into? Those type of things, like how I had mentioned in the Los Angeles, when the mayor came on board immediately after the goals were launched, just embracing it, saying that, yes, this is what we're going to do, really puts us in not the time that otherwise would get wasted kind of shrinks. I think Ghana, they had Hildy, who was amazing, the brain that Hildy, who was the brain behind this integration. Ghana kind of relied on her expertise to, take this forward. And I'm sure they probably had their own ups and downs, which we did not get to talk about. I'm sure, currently, they are way ahead, right? They are the first country in the world who did it, and OECD countries later adopted the model by Ghana. And also every year now in Accra, they have this impact investment fair that they conduct, which brings in multitude of, non-traditional investments that, would not have had the opportunity otherwise. So again, there is a lot of benefit, but I'm not sure if I'm directly answering your question, because I've not gone into the detail of the challenges per se, but definitely challenges are going to be part of it. But I think navigating it and swiftly iterating is what probably matters.
And so forgive me if this sounds too simple, but 17 goals is a lot. And then you kind of break it down even further and further. So I guess my first question is just kind of, how do you look at that and not get overwhelmed? And then second, I guess, where do you start on the strengths? Where do you start?
Yeah, I think, yesterday, Helen and I, Dr. Bond and I, we were having this conversation on even though there are these so many goals, there are certainly drivers or facilitators for development. There are, for example, right, SDG 4, for instance, is without education, without equitable education, it's going to be very difficult. Without quality education, it's going to be hard to realize the other goals when it comes to SDG 8, for instance, and without peace and justice, right? I was in this American Leadership Forum where they quoted President Biden, where he talked about how inequality in the US is a pressing challenge and is a national security issue with global consequences. So if we do not address the peace and justice and the inequality issues, I think it's going to be difficult. So I think, in a conflict environment, we cannot grow without peace and justice and education. So there are certainly certain driver SDGs that we can, narrow down. So this is where, we are going to work together as collectively in our region to address, and Cleveland being one of the top 10 most segregated cities in the country. I think there are some natural, informations that is being delivered through some of these data that allows us to say, okay, these would be some really high value SDGs that we should get on right away. That kind of decision making also kind of helps, but also looking at what is your organization doing? Is that in line with, where the need is? If not, what do we do differently that would help us visibly see change? Because sometimes, we may care about certain issues, but they may not be the top issues in terms of priority that the region would need to be addressed. So again, just trying to weigh in our priorities and our interest areas versus what the region needs, trying to make that decision and discrimination about what is what would really, collectively would really make a huge impact.
And is there a formal process to seek out external entities and partners, and what does that look like?
I think just communicating, I think naturally we work in a more integrated format, like institutions are natural allies and partners. Institutions like CSU has always worked with communities. And again, this integrated and this, this interdisciplinary work that, CSU and Harvard universities, universities like them are being a model to the rest of the country, because when you bring those interdisciplinary thinking to the table, I think it naturally brings those alignment into the conversation. And if we decide to use this framework, which is a wonderful framework, I think just trying to integrate that as part of the thinking process, and not essentially feeling that we are alone trying to do this, but also trying to connect ourselves with national players who are already ahead of the curve, who are early adopters. So really provides us that strength and support that we need. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are probably frameworks or crosswalks or things that have already been built by other early adopters who are very happy to share. And UNSDSN actually being one of the, their main goal of establishing themselves is to provide those kind of capacity, for localization of SDGs.
I know that we have a little bit of time left, but I think I see some questions in the chat. So if you're okay with that, Deepa, maybe we can start with some questions from some people in the audience. So the first one I see is there a way that the foundation is collaborating with others in an integrated way and bringing organizations together? i.e. the dashboard is a great tool. Is there a plan to adopt a tool, or is there a strategy already being used for the city?
Yeah, I think, we would eventually get to a point where we can answer all the questions, that's where we would like to go to. But currently we are internally looking at, trying to, because we have done the alignment work for program team, which is one of the many teams that is there within the foundations. And, hopefully by the end of the year, we will also get to understand, where the other teams' investments are. And with the Brooklyn 17-room conversation, getting an opportunity to deep dive around the impact areas, I think allows us to kind of clearly look at those fewer interventions with maximum impact that I talked about, the value of SDGs are. So would probably come to light to us. We are still learning in the process. At the same time, partners like ICLEI and others who are when I mean partners nationally, who are doing this amazing work, who can, we are thinking about, what if our region could have a cohort rather than having the SDG cities national cohort? Can our region, embrace this SDG city regional cohort, where few of the cities decide to go, be a part of the SDGs process that is put together by ICLEI, and maybe learn together, have a buddy system where, we are working together collectively. And with the Mott Foundation's grant that we have received, launching the regional cohort for the foundation space, I think there is a lot of learning that could happen in the next year, which would, naturally bring us together. And Greater Cleveland Partnership is also, a great partner that we have been working on, with who is bringing corporates around the table through their sustainability conference and ESG work. Hopefully, at some point, we would all come together and to look at the different alignments and intersect. So currently, the intersectionality around this particular topic, is not in scale, I would say, but certainly possible. And Kara, is it possible for us to have a video on for everyone, or?
Wonderful. Well, so I see another question in the chat. Deepa, what do you see as the potential for building on the work you've shown us today? And what are the next steps or challenges that you see in the next 2 to 5 years?
I mean, would love to see cities in the region embrace it, so it becomes easier to communicate. And also more foundations kind of as we go through this process, kind of identifying what are some of the other foundations and what their priorities are, and understanding it would certainly kind of lead us to the next step. And I love the dashboard, the interactive dashboards that the city of Los Angeles has built. There are so many such wonderful interactive, easy to understand and, communicate dashboards that are out there, just hoping to understand and learn the true value of that and see what it would mean for us to have a regional dashboard like that, to kind of see how we can collectively come together. I mean, it doesn't essentially ask us to shift any of our operation or way of way of work currently, but it just unites us around this common goals and impact. So again, great question, but currently I think the journey itself still being new. There's a lot of things that we are learning and doing, but partners like other community foundations who are early adopters in their space, which is the Central Florida Foundation, and Collaboratory, they're all of a huge, help, because we kind of are very much in communication with each other. And, SDSN, Dr. Victor Udo and Helen Bond and Sonia, who's also there from the national team, they're always there, for us to kind of tap in as knowledge partners, because I'm also been fortunate to serve with them for almost 2 years now. And Dr. Roseland, who is also doing amazing work in trying to bring in businesses, local government, and other foundations and stakeholders together. So there are all those great best practices that are out there. So looking to accelerate that learning and doing. Of course, nothing is possible without our amazing grants management and our team at the foundation, who have been phenomenal support through this work. So, I think that's the next step.
That's great. I know your grants management team loves data. Very curious. That's always helpful, right?
Yes.
So there's a question from it's Kayla Roberts. Kayla, do you want to ask your question, or I can read it?
Yeah, Kayla is from ICLEI, by the way.
Okay.
Thanks for joining, Kayla.
Well, I can read. So oh, there you are.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here. Trying to get the video going. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Deepa, for the wonderful presentation. I don't think my comment there was so much a question, but more of a thank you for championing this effort that we called the SDGs Cities Challenge, which is a group learning cohort to bring cities and counties and whole regions together to learn much about what you were discussing today throughout the hour. And so this is kind of an open call of sorts. It is definitely a collaboration opportunity. I'm with an organization called ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, and have been discussing with Deepa about how to bring this challenge opportunity to your region, which would be the first in the United States, probably first in the world, of a collective effort of local governments, creating this kind of groundswell in a regional way to implement the SDGs in principle and in practice throughout government operations for the benefit of an entire community throughout a region. So thanks for giving me the space to talk a little bit about it. Thank you so much for Deepa for all your partnerships.
You can.
So I guess I have a question for you, Deepa, about just kind of what you came in when you started to do the work, what you thought you would learn, and what has surprised you through this process to date.
I think personally, if I were to speak from my heart, right, when I started, one is I was absolutely new to philanthropy. I was just coming in with a lot of experience in community development. People and connection to the community was very dear to me, and working in the space of sustainability is very dear to me. So this position, which was created as an intersectionality position, I felt really fit in. But then as I joined, the philanthropic space, there was so much of learning that has to happen simultaneously at the same time. Also the doing of the regular grant making that I was learning and trying to see that there was so much of intersectionality. I was curious because, and thanks to my ongoing conversations that with our grants management director, with whom I was actually able to understand more on the nuances of how they code in the back end, what happens, what are those, how are they capturing those intersectionality. Just learning and being open to kind of observing that really made me more and more curious about a lot of things. And Diane, our grants management director, and Kirby, they always encouraged me whenever I asked questions. They would say, these are really great questions. We are still, we are kind of looking for answers, or we are still figuring it out. So that kind of made me speak more and kind of brainstorm together more, I would say, just to kind of introduce this model and the framework. And through the process, early on, I still remember when Dr. Bond and Dr. Udo, from Bucknell University, who's joined with us here today, part of SDSN, they would come speak to our leadership, just kind of talk about, these. And then as I was explaining how I would love to bring in this lens, because it naturally seems to align, and, there are a lot of impact that we can look into. So again, that is how the conversation started, Kara. Of course, as in any space, people are really concerned when, people could be concerned, right? When there's so much going on, we are moving to a new headquarters, there's strategic framework process that is going on, and there's all these efforts. And then this almost feels like one more layer. So again, once the team understood that this framework really doesn't expect us to change anything that we are doing, you're just adding that one intentionality in your work, really able to capture the impact in a very different level, and also brings that clarity into the work that we are already doing, just to see, this is what we are doing. Okay, for example, we have been investing in diversifying, the energy sources, but are we investing or providing grants for the energy efficiency? When you look at the SDG 7, when you're looking at those target level, it's okay, so we are currently not doing here. So it also acts as a gap analysis tool. So, okay, so maybe in the future when we have, additional grant, maybe that's an area that we would like to expand, right? That's kind of that type of that thinking and those clustering that we see this intersectionality happen. So now we can be more intentional about meeting around those intersectionality or the clusters that, was informed in the process. So again, these kind of, this collective ongoing discussions is what is the beauty of this whole process. I feel that's where the learning lies mainly.
I love the way you capture that, because I think change for so many of us can be so scary. But when you frame it in that way and make it about learning and about growing, it makes it a little less scary. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would really love to, quickly give a shout out to Dr. Dubois. I don't know if he's still here, but from Kent State University, who initially, he actually had in 2017 done a report and worked with Cleveland Foundation with the students in one of the summer program, and he had looked at some of the board directed grants and did the alignment, not at the target level that intense, but at the SDG level. And there was a report that he had created and, recommended the foundation to see this as a step forward in their work. But again, it kind of was, as it was, they were working with an intern, and it almost surfaced much later in the process. But I was so excited to see that, and literally we reached out to Dr. Dubois and brought him in, and just to have that kind of thought leadership in the region, I was very excited to even connect with him after all these years. It wasn't done in 2017. We connected in 2022, and we are looking to see opportunities to collaborate.
That's great. So we have another question from, is it Vishali Patel? Do you want to ask your question, or I can read if you don't come on screen. I can read it. So the question is how folks can get involved with the work that's being done and is needed to reach these goals.
I think once we kind of have our understanding much more stronger, after the Brookings conversation, and as we get a year's data and kind of come up with our strategic framework and move to our newer building, I think the next step in the process, naturally, after our stronger understanding, is to connect with the communities, just very similar to how, maybe similar or maybe different to how Los Angeles have done, or like Pittsburgh, they have this Engage program where it literally, when you go to their landing page, they would ask you to kind of tell which SDGs you're interested in, and they would actually connect you with events that's happening around that impact area. So again, every city is having their own kind of engagement mechanism. So we can certainly, again, community foundations are strong as our stakeholders and partners in the space. So the more we can partner with the city and more we can partner with the corporates and everybody in the time that's best suited for all, I think that is when we can really take it to the community. And, without, there was this beautiful verse that was told when I attended the UNGA event is by the president of UN Foundation, is that there's nothing about us without us. So without the community, we really can't do anything. So I think having the community from early on really is truly the value of all these goals and impact.
So we talked a little before the forum began, Deepa, we talked a little bit about all the experts. What did you call them? The superstars that we have joining us today. So I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I also want to take advantage of the fact that we have so many wonderful people with expertise. So if anyone would like to talk a little bit about their work, we have a few more moments before we're wrapping up.
I think, Dr. Rosalind probably, and Sister Chris from Ursuline College, and also I would say Dr. Dubois. I mean, those are enough. Certainly Dr. Bond and Dr. Udo. I don't know, there are so many experts. Whoever would like to chime in, please feel free to.
I'll say a word or two, and many thanks to you for having invited me to barge into your webinar this afternoon. At Ursuline, the connection was this, that at our sophomore seminar level, we've asked our students to look at things that could bring positive change to their own local communities, wherever they define their local community, in terms of the SDGs. And we just had reports from the students this week linking things that will make that kind of a difference in their local community tied to the particular goals. And in 2 weeks, we have one of the local mayors coming in to talk about how residents, how ordinary citizens can influence for the good, all in the same kind of theme.
Thank you so much.
But I think, Deepa, you've done a great job trying to show that the SDGs is really one organization to another, one university to another, one individual to another. And that's the only way we'll be able to take everybody out of poverty. That's the only way we'll be able to reduce hunger and ultimately make sure we get a sustainably developed world without leaving anybody behind. And that's really the key issue when people talk about just sustainability, when people talk about DEJ like we do in the Sustainable Development Network Services. So I hope we can duplicate what we've heard from Deepa in our individual organizations or universities, trying to align sustainable development with what we are doing in our organizations and helping people to create the kind of future we want. So thank you very much, Kara,
And thank you very much, Deepa, for putting this great event together. So good to see everybody.
Thank you so much, Victor.
I will chime in because I've been invited so strongly to do so. So I'm Mark Roseland from Arizona State University, and nice to see you again, Deepa, and Helen, and I don't think there's anybody else I know on this call, but this is really fabulous work, Deepa. We talked several months ago, and I'm just delighted to see how far it's come. I would just say that because you've worked for the city before, I just think that connection between what the foundation is doing and what the city is doing is really important to make sure that the foundation's work is rooted as you're doing in the actual progress or lack thereof in the city. And I think that's particularly important as we go into the next period of time, because as you know, cities don't usually pay much attention to sort of global things like the SDGs. And if the midterms go the way they are looking, I think that's going to be even more the case. And so it's going to be really hard, I'm afraid, to get sort of foundations and cities and local organizations to say, why should I care about something that's coming out of the UN, even though we know that it didn't come from the UN, it came to the UN from thousands and thousands of people and organizations all over the world. But most Americans don't know that. They think it's coming from the UN and it's top down. So that's always been a problem in this country, and it will remain so. So making sure that we are connecting the work of what foundations are doing with what the cities are doing, I think is really key, and not to put too many eggs in the SDG basket. I'm afraid, much as I love the SDGs, but I just don't know that that's going to be a good way to promote this kind of multi-dimensional, multi-objective work going forward. And folks, if you want to reach me, I'm at Arizona State University, or you can look up the Community Capital Lab, which is the way I talk about this intersectionality of different important values. I talk about it as not just natural capital or social capital, but community capital. So Community Capital Lab will take you to me. Thank you.
I'd like to follow up with that. Thank you, Deepa. What a wonderful job. It's been so wonderful working with Deepa and others on UN SDSN USA. I'm Helen Bond from Howard University. I co-chair SDSN USA, and I'm also a co-chair with Victor and Deepa on diversity, equity, and justice. One of the things that we do on the DEJ, diversity, equity, and justice for sustainability, is to communicate. I was thinking about something that Mark said, to how to communicate the importance of the SDGs across a broad framework to vulnerable communities. And I like to think of it, and I was really hard with what Mark said. A lot of people do think it's something that the UN is imposing on us. And indeed, member states and nations ask this of the UN. But we like to think of it as, if you ask a group of people, what does it take for human beings to grow, to live, and to thrive? SDG 1, it takes food, no hunger. SDG 2, it takes resources. People have to have access to poverty. It takes good health and well-being. We saw that over the pandemic. SDG 3, at SDG 8, decent work and growth, a decent climate. I just saw something come out of the Lung Foundation that vulnerable communities breathe polluted air 3.8 times at an increased rate than non-minority communities. So when you think about, you ask people, what does it take for you not only to grow and thrive, but also your nation? It takes education. It takes gender equality. We know that countries will not develop if women are left behind. what does it take? It takes a decent climate to grow and to thrive. And this is what ties this to a human agenda, not a United Nations agenda. This is what we all need as humans. So that's one way that we focus. But I'd like to say it's wonderful to be here, and congratulations again to Deepa, Dean Anglin, and others. It's been wonderful to be here, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen.
So Deepa, we are coming to an end of our time, and I wondered if you had any kind of final comments that you would like to make.
I see Dr. Dubois coming offline, maybe a word, and then I would.
Thank you, Deepa, for your wonderful presentation and for stimulating such a great opportunity for our region. One of the things, I'm David Dubois, and I teach sustainability at Kent State and the College of Business. What many of you may be surprised to learn is within the business community and business schools in particular, it's now a requirement to have societal impact as a core part of the curriculum of the college. And the kinds of experts that we explore in doing so are really interested in the idea of how do we achieve these societal goals when, for example, the cost of shifting to 100% clean energy is in the trillions, and not to mention all of the other kinds of programs around social justice and food and everything else that we need to transform. And the kind of approach we take in business, because so much of this is going on not only in business schools, but within the businesses themselves, is how do we creatively reposition existing assets, existing resources, and repurpose them to accomplish these goals. So that's one of the ways that we look forward to contributing to the regional sustainable development of Northeast Ohio. So thanks, Deepa, for making that possible.
Thank you, Dr. Dubois. Thank you so much, Kara. I think, we truly appreciate this platform for the conversation. Honestly, I think just hearing from everybody and learning together, I think that's the only way we can move forward in our region. So as I continue personally to also, work on my learning curve, I would really look for, institutions, the knowledge partners, to kind of be more intentional in kind of finding opportunities to collaborate with community foundations and our work at the community and corporate partners, definitely, humble request to kind of, because we don't speak the language, hopefully, once we have this kind of a common vocabulary, we will naturally be able to see those connections and opportunities that we probably have not seen otherwise. So the sooner we are able to come together, I think the impact could be all the more greater. And again, so glad to hear from Kale that, we would be one of the first in the globe to even, have that kind of a thinking if we launch the regional cities, SDG cities. Certainly that is a great opportunity for us. And anything that you think, would continue the work, and any information you think I should know, please share with me as well. And I'm hoping, if it's okay, to share like 3 or 4 questions as a survey question for me. I will share through Kara. That could be circulated. It should not take more than 5 minutes. That's part of my learning from you all, and maybe an effort to keep you all posted of our efforts in the future as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you so much for taking the time and being such a great resource to all of us. And we certainly want to stay connected as a partner. And we will have the recording up on our website soon. So be on the lookout for that, as well as the resources that Deepa has put together. And just a really quick plug that our next forum will be November 12th at the same time, 4 o'clock. We'll be joined by the Urban Institute to discuss their recent released report on the financial health of community-based development organizations. So be on the lookout for information on that. And we have already started conversations about perhaps an extended conversation on SDGs with Deepa. So in the spring. So you will all certainly be the first to hear about that when we have something to share. So thank you all. Thank you, Deepa, and thank you all for participating. It's been wonderful.